All right, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. It is 5 minutes after 5 on March 3rd, 2022. Judy Morales leads us in the invocation, followed by our pledge, which will be led by Deputy City Secretary Liz Caraway.
Join me, please. Lord, we come today to thank you that you are so perfectly faithful and that you never forget and you never fail us and you never take back a promise. You have promised that when your people gather in your name, your presence is here with us. So we gather today, fill our minds and our hearts and our mouths with praise to you. Fulfill our desires and prayers and make all things work together for the good. Increase our knowledge of your truth and let us continue to experience your love. We ask your blessings on the people who are here today and for all those who have been called to lead the nation, our city, our mayor, our city council, our city staff, our police, our fire, first responders, and all our citizens and neighbors. Grant us the wisdom and courage to know to do what is the right and good and true thing to do. May we speak out when it is time to speak out and listen patiently. And when it is time to listen, may we always be guided by the spirit of community, by the spirit of justice, and by the spirit of your love. Lord, we see today the reckless action of people like Putin who intentionally disregard the welfare of other people around them and who start destructive fires and who live to see others suffer. Take up arms to rattle the foundation and the earth, and they seek to destroy and kill. Lord, we ask that you change the hearts of these bloodthirsty people. Make them lay down their arms so that peace may prosper in our nation and in the world. Lord, put an end to the shedding of innocent blood around the world and destroy the schemes of the wicked monger who monger after war and conflict. And let us declare today that we rebuke Satan in Jesus' name, now and always. Intervene, Father, in this world that we might avoid the horrors of a war. We ask that you allow the peace on earth to endure through the schemes of the wicked people, that peace surpasses all understanding. Father, we thank you for being our Father and for loving each one of us. Let us live each day to share your word and to continue to love our families, neighbors, and friends. We ask this all in your precious Son's name, Jesus. Amen.
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both very much. Time that the City of Temple takes public comments. Any citizen that wishes to address the council on any matter may do so as long as you've signed up prior to this meeting. Public comments will be received during this time. We ask that you limit those comments to 3 minutes, and no discussion or final action will be taken by the City Council. We have one person that is signed up for public comments, Mr. Alan Lytle.
My name is Alan Lytle. I live at 504B Paseo del Plata here in Temple. Thank you, Mayor and Council, for hearing me. I have a request on item K. It's a rather large sum of money, $120,000, to dig 2 ditches and put some sewer lines in. I would like to see that taken out of the consent agenda so that you can present what's in the packet to the public of exactly what we're spending $120,000 on. I ask that because of the other item, item 9, which I will speak at later, which is where we're giving away a right of way, buying $120,000 right of way and giving away another one. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lytle. Ms. Davis, with the presentations ready for that? No, let's do the consent, but I mean, we do have a presentation ready for that, or at least some explanation.
Right, we can
Yeah.
go over the memo that's included in the packet. We don't have a PowerPoint.
Okay, let's do that.
Are we referring to K or none?
K
K.
on,
okay.
on the consent.
Yeah, no, I understand. So we're pulling that, in other words.
Yes. Council, we, during discussion and workshop, we didn't desire to pull anything else. Has anybody changed their mind? So the only thing we're going to be pulling tonight is K. All right, then at this time, I'll entertain a motion on the, pardon?
We have a special resolution for item number.
Oh, you're right. I'm sorry. I was moving right on down the line. I do that. You threw me off, Alan. I don't- So, again, I apologize. Let's move on to, let's move back up to item 3, which is special recognition, which will be a proclamation recognizing the March 2022 as Theater in Our Schools Month. Mr. Payne, if you would come on up. And also, do we have Colin Fowler here? Colin, if you'll come on up. So Mr. Payne sent me an email a month or so ago asking that that we would, if the city council would recognize March as Theater in Schools Month. And we are happy to do that. I have, I've known the Payne family for a number of years. Zeke, you may or may not know, but I've known you since you were very little. So it's good to see you again. I haven't seen you in a while. So just real quickly, if I may, Zeke is a junior at Belton New Tech and is a varsity member of the theater, varsity member in theater at Belton High School. This year, he was selected as a state thespian officer and serves as a regional liaison for theater programs in Central Texas. Zeke has been cast in over a dozen productions since beginning theater in middle school. Additionally, Zeke played the lead in a short film that will actually be premiered at South by Southwest later this month. Congratulations. That's no easy task. Since the city of Temple has 2 high schools in it, I contacted Ms. Tollison over at Temple High, and she sent Mr. Fowler over. Thankfully, I'm glad you were able to make that happen on such short notice. Mr. Fowler is the Temple High thespian president and the son of Heath and Jennifer Fowler. He is also a member of the Temple High School Polyphonics and the Meister Singers. He's been in 18 Temple High School theater productions. Yep, that's right, Temple High School. He's been in 18 Temple High School theater productions, including Peter Pan, Baby with Bathwater, Chicago, and The Lion King. And he has also worked on the set crew and as an actor. So one thing that I like about this particular proclamation is, you know, we there are lots of groups of kids that we typically honor, right? And we go to Friday night football games and basketball games and things like that. And you guys work just as hard at your craft as anyone else. So it's our honor to make this presentation to you guys tonight. If you would come up here and let me read this proclamation. And then if either of you have anything to say, we'd ask that you step to the podium up there. The microphone up there will catch your voice for the recording. So if I may. This proclamation is from the office of the mayor of the city of Temple. Whereas theater education enriches the lives of countless students in our schools and allows them to discover their myriad skills and abilities in leadership, communication, and collaboration. And it unlocks the unlimited potential of the student. And whereas theater is a critical component of the learning process and develops students' creativity, self-discipline, problem-solving, and critical thinking abilities. Whereas research indicates that students with more theater education have a higher academic achievement across the curriculum. The importance of theater education is recognized as being necessary for the full development of all students. Theater in Our School Month is a special opportunity for our community to engage in the ongoing process of theater education and to bring a heightened awareness of the importance of the arts and education. Now, therefore, I, Timothy A. Davis, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby recognize March 2022 as Theater in Our Schools Month in the city of Temple, Texas, and I urge all citizens to join us as we recognize. In testimony whereof, I witness my hand on the seal of the city of Temple, Texas, on this 3rd day of March 2022. Thank you both very much. I appreciate it. Zeke, I'm going to give you two. And if you guys would like to say anything, please step up there and let us know.
I just wanted to speak briefly on the importance of theater in our schools month, and more importantly, just theater in general at our schools. I think it's really easy to at first only want to see the stuff that's on paper. The things that you can see in the grade books and the report cards, the 65 points on average that a theater student will get on an SAT, the verbal portion, rather than if they don't take theater, or the 35 points that you get on the math portion if you do versus if you don't. But I think what truly changes the kids that go through the program are those things that are less tangible, the things that you can more easily find within them rather than outside of them. And so I think self-confidence is a big part of it. I think the community that it builds amongst the students is another part. And I think the life lessons that it will teach you as you go through the program, middle school, high school, further, you can learn everything and will constantly be learning. Me, myself, I started doing theater when I was in 8th grade. And the reason I started is as a 7th grader, I felt that I was missing something, that I was going through my day to day at school, just looking for that next grade, not really understanding why I was doing that or having a group of friends that I could lean on. When I was kind of coerced into joining the musical, and I found that without any experience, I had still found a company to be a part of. I had found that shoulder to lean on when I was sad. I had found that people to celebrate with when I was happy. And I think that is something that is priceless, no matter your age. I think that it can also teach you many easily learned things that people don't really focus on, like confidence to speak in front of a crowd or the confidence to perform whenever you are on stage. There are things that people find that they are afraid of because they don't have the right people to teach them how to get over that fear. I think it teaches you a lot of hard skills too. There's a lot of damage control that you learn whenever it's show night and a person doesn't show up, or whenever a set piece falls at the last minute. It's something that is crucial that everybody needs to know, is how to fix that thing last minute before it all collapses. I think carpentry is something that almost all of us learn how to do. I learned how to build a tower, how to build trees, how to build a castle, all for on stage, and I learned that all for one show. I think you learn, as I said, stage presence, which more and more with the common era that we're coming into, where everything is a performance with digital media and everything, it is so important to know how to captivate an audience, because when an audience is involved, that is when they truly believe what you are saying and when they are willing to go further than you have ever thought you would be able to with just one voice. But most importantly, a character teaches you things about yourself that you will never learn without that experience. It is important, and it's a classic to say that you should walk in someone's shoes before you judge them, walk a mile in their shoes. And the best way to do that is by acting as that character. Me, myself, I just got back less than an hour ago. I was playing a character in a play for rehearsal where he is stuck in a job that he does not like. He works himself to death, but he does not have the courage to speak up to his boss, to ask for a raise, to ask for time off, or to just quit. And so he is stuck in that time, that management of he can't find a way out, but he's too afraid to force his way out. And now, as of experiencing that for the many hours that I've rehearsed, I understand that if I ever find myself falling into that pattern, that is something that if I don't fight out of, I'm going to stay there forever. And overall, I think a student who walks into a theater classroom on their first day will walk out a different person on their last day. And that is something that every single class at every single school should hope to accomplish. And theater has been doing it for thousands of years. Thank you.
Well said, Mr. Payne. Congratulations to both you and Mr. Fowler. Now let's move on to consent agenda. All items under this section are considered to be routine by the city council and may be enacted in one motion. If discussion is desired by council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda at the request of that council member and will be considered separately. We've already discussed pulling item K. Council, anything else? All right, then at this time, I'll entertain a motion on items 4A through 4O minus 4K.
Motion to approve the consent agenda items 4A through 4O minus K, which is pulled for further discussion.
Second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Walker. Council, if you would, please cast your vote. Item 4A through 4O minus K passes 5 votes to 0. Moving on to item 4K. Item 4K reads to consider adopting a resolution authorizing the purchase of 1 right-of-way and 2 drainage easements necessary for the construction of the Outer Loop West project, phases 1 and 2, and authorizing closing costs associated with the purchase in an estimated amount of $120,000.
I've got it, Mayor. And Christine is going to back me up in case anyone has any questions that I don't have the answer to. But as you all know, the city is currently in the process of designing the roadway improvements for Outer Loop Phase 1, the completion of that phase and the beginning of Phase 2. And in order to do that, we need to obtain right-of-way and easements for 13 properties. The city owns 2 of those parcels. But so that means we are negotiating with 11 property owners for those remaining parcels. As part of that, surveys and appraisals were completed, and we've been in the process of negotiating. And so now we have reached an agreement with property owners for 1 right-of-way and 2 drainage easements that are necessary for this phase of the project. And the amount in $120,000 will cover the purchase of those easements and rights-of-way, as well as a closing cost. And it's obviously we're just needing to acquire personal property that is owned by individuals. And so that's what we're doing. So we can complete our roadway construction across private property and obtain those real estate easements that we need.
And the city of Temple just happened to own 2 of those
Yes.
13. So there's no swap, no giveaway. It's just using the city of
Correct.
Temple's
Mhm.
current land.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, for those other 2 parcels, but for these, they're owned by private citizens and we are purchasing their property interest at fair market value.
Very good.
Mhm.
Understood. Council, any questions on 4K? All right, at this time, I'll entertain a motion on item 4K.
Second that motion.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. And we have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, if you would, please cast your vote on 4K. (4K) passes 5 votes to 0. Moving on to the regular agenda, we'll read in items 5 and 6 at the same time. On item 5, it's the first reading in a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning from ag to planned development general retail with a development site plan and a conditional use permit for the sale of all alcoholic beverages for on-premise consumption, where the gross revenue from those alcoholic beverages is 75% or more of the total gross revenue, consisting of 7 adjacent tracts totaling 33.713 plus or minus acres in the city of Temple, Bell County, Texas, addressed as 6202 Airport Road. And item 6 reads, it's the first reading in a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning request from ag to planned development general retail with a development site plan and a conditional use permit for the sale of all alcoholic beverages for on-premise consumption, where the gross revenue from the sale of those alcoholic beverages is 75% or more of the total gross revenue, consisting of 3 adjacent tracts totaling 10.198 plus or minus acres in the city of Temple, Bell County, Texas, addressed as 6602 Airport Road. Mr. Chandler.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. And so obviously this is 2 tracts, and so it'll require 2 actions, but it's the same applicant and pretty much the same plan development that's proposed. And so we're combining it into one presentation. And so you can see the property. It's along Airport Road, just to the east of the airport, and is also bisected by Airport Trail. And so on the left, you got the 10 acres, and then on the right, you've got the 30 some odd acres. And so zooming in, you can see a little bit more closely. Item 11, or excuse me, case number 11, item number 5 is shown outlined in yellow. That's 38.387 acres. And I think what's important to point out is that this is within the corporate campus master plan boundaries. And so there will be some differences between this one and the adjacent tract in terms of standards. And so these are exhibits that were provided by the applicant, and it shows the plan development conditions that were proposed and that staff has worked with the applicant to submit to P&Z and then ultimately to you all at City Council. We'll go over those in a little more detail. This map is the land use plan from the corporate campus master plan. And so you can see what's highlighted in yellow there. Case number 11, that is the 38 acres. And so, of course, the other tract is just to the west of it, right outside of the boundary. And so the corporate campus master plan, by its name, of course, is designed to promote live, work, and play development so that you have corporate offices and neighborhoods surrounding it, a different concept than what corporate campuses used to be and what we often see even in Temple, which got the giant campus, but you have to drive there. So essentially that's it in a nutshell. And so here are the conditions that are proposed: substantial compliance with the site plan, compliance with the corporate campus master plan concepts. That's for case 11 only. Compliance with Federal Aviation Administration regulations in terms of height, et cetera. Requiring a navigation easement over the entire plan development. As you all are probably aware, this is at the end of the busiest runway. And so there was actually a previous case on this property that included residential. P&Z recommended disapproval of that. The applicant withdrew. So the bottom line is, I think we've all learned something from that case and are trying to apply that to this one. And that is, one, having a navigation easement so that property owners understand that, one, they're near the airport and they have to follow FAA regulations. Also prohibiting all residential uses. That's another important piece that we learned. Also that the general retail uses and standards would apply, with some additional uses that are commercial zoning uses, including mini storage warehouse and storage warehouse, contractor storage or equipment yard, maintenance and repair service for buildings, hauling or storage company. And once again, that is because of its location at the end of the runway. So it's kind of a balance of compliance with the corporate campus master plan, yet also uses that are appropriate at that particular location. Also requiring a 10-foot shared use path to comply with our trails master plan along airport. Approving the conditional use permit as was outlined in the item description. And then lastly, just working with the applicant prior to permitting administratively on detailed site plans for these developments to ensure compliance with the corporate campus master plan. And so here on the left, you can see the thoroughfare and trails plan. And so there's actually a minor arterial proposed through the larger tract. You can see the green dashed line indicates that. Future land use for a comprehensive plan shows this as employment mixed use. It's certainly compliant with that and is appropriate along a major arterial. And so here's the property right now, a lot of prickly pear. And so the notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet. So for number 12, We had 4 notices sent out, and for number 11, 6, and 0 returned in agreement, but we do have 1 in disagreement, and that is on number 11. And I will go into a little more detail about that, because even though it's just 1 property owner, you can see indicated with the D in the yellow just to the east of the larger tract, by the acreage that person owns, it does trigger a supermajority vote, because it's 26% of the buffer area represented by that property owner, which triggers supermajority and at least 4 affirmative votes by city council. And so at the February 7th, I'm a month ahead somehow, P&Z recommended approval 8-0 for both cases, but just pointing out that the supermajority would be triggered for item or case number 11, item number 5. And so staff recommends approval of the conditional use permit and the zoning cases for both, and the corresponding conditional use permits. And happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Chandler? Council, any questions for Mr. Chandler on this? Any discussion amongst ourselves? Okay, very good. So at this time, I'll open the public hearing on both items 5 and 6. We ask that you step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the virtual platform. Mr. Lytle?
Good evening,
Yes,
Alan
sir.
Lytle, 504B Paseo del Plata Temple. Both 5 and 6 indicate beverage sales 75% or more, which is usually a designation we left for opening a bar, because their income is 100% selling beer or alcohol. The presentation, however, says that the planning and zoning approved up to 75%, which is usually a restaurant designation, 50 to 75% of sales of alcohol and then food to go with it. So before you get to the second reading, I would hope one of those two gets corrected to what it should be, which probably should be 50 to 75 for restaurants, not a bar that close to the airport. Thank you.
Thank you. I bet we're fixed to hear right now.
And Mr. Lytle brought up a really good point. There is a discrepancy, and what is in the item description is actually 75% or more. And so that's actually what the applicant has requested. So
Okay.
I apologize for that. That's an error on my part.
Okay. Very good. Anyone else wish to speak? Is there anyone on the virtual platform? Okay. All right, there being none, then council, I'll entertain a motion just on item 5 is what we're voting on. I'll entertain a motion for approval.
I'll make a motion to approve item 5.
I'll second the motion.
We have a motion by Councilmember Walker. We have a second by Councilmember Williams. Council, if you would, please cast your vote on item 5. Item 5 passes 5 votes to 0. Kathy, I may have failed to state that I was closing the public hearing. Is that a complication? Okay. Okay, moving on, I'll entertain a motion on item number 6.
Mayor, I'll make a motion on item 6 as presented by Mr. Chandler to approve item 6.
We have a motion by Councilmember Long, and we have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, if you would, please cast your vote on item 6. Item 6 passes 5 votes to 0. Moving on to item 7 and 8. Item 7 is the first reading in a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning request from single family 1 to planned development general retail with a development site plan and a conditional use permit for the sale of all alcoholic beverages for on-premise consumption where the gross revenue from alcoholic beverages is more than 50% and less than 75% of the total gross revenue on 1.826 plus or minus acres in the city of Temple, Bell County, Texas, addressed as 615 Hilliard Road. And item 8 is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning request from single family 1 to planned development general retail with a development site plan and a conditional use permit for the sale of all alcohol beverages for on-site consumption where the gross revenue from alcoholic beverages is more than 50% and less than 75% of the total gross revenue on 27.561 plus or minus acres in the city of Temple, Texas, Bell County, addressed as 521 Hilliard Road. Mr. Chandler.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council. And unlike the previous one, this one actually is a request for a conditional use permit of up to 75% and not more than for alcohol sales. And so this is very similar. It's a planned development with a lot of the same proposed conditions and also combining 2 properties into a single presentation. So it would require 2 different actions. And so you can see the vicinity map that this property is just to the south of Crossroads Park. And so on the right, you can see the tract case number 13 that currently has a home on it, but that has been sold. And then the other tract is for case number 14, and that's 27.5 acres that also backs up to Brooks Drive. And presumably some of these folks here live on Brooks Drive and probably have something to say about this. And so looking at the zoning map, you can see that it's currently zoned single family 2, and that's shown in yellow. And Brooks Drive in green, those are actually agricultural zone properties, but it's also surrounded by general retail south of it and across Hilliard, or actually our outer loop. And then ironically, our park is shown as light industrial, but it's certainly not used that way. And so in our comprehensive plan for the future development plan, it shows this as proposed corridor mixed use, which is shown in the purple. But it's also, if you see kind of the diagonal cross hatching, the circle just to the southwest, it's on the edge of a mixed use activity center. And so what is proposed here, the combination of townhomes, multifamily, general retail, is consistent with that vision in the comprehensive plan. Of course, Hilliard is a major road and a major arterial, was upgraded in 2009. It was really the first section of our outer loop. And of course, we have what was item K that you all just took action on, that is part of expanding that outer loop. Trails master plan also shows a trail along the outer loop, and there is an existing 10-foot shared use path there already. And so here's the concept plan provided by the applicant. And so what you're seeing here, the brown would be multifamily, the multifamily 2. Yellow, those are proposed townhomes, and they would back up to really an 80-foot landscape buffer, but the Crossroads Park. And then general retail shown there in pink. And then you have kind of the rough alignment of a street coming through there, and ultimately connecting to Crossroads Park for emergency access, so kind of a secondary emergency access, but also future pedestrian access for residents to be able to walk to the park. And so just like the previous case, we have some exhibits that include the proposed conditions, and they're very similar to some of the uses. Not as many uses proposed along Airport, because this does back up to a park and the neighborhood, but the CUP, theater or playhouse, the vertical mixed use. So the ability to have office or retail on the ground floor and residential above, which would most likely be along the outer loop, Hilliard. And then just plain multifamily, family two, single family attached dwellings and townhouses that shown in the yellow previously. And then zero lot line dwelling. Those are also townhomes, just to make sure that that standard is allowed where appropriate. And so here you can see the photos. Top left, that is the residential property that's part of this zoning request. And you can see the field for the larger tract. And then to the north, this is the 80-foot landscape buffer area, just wooded area. I mean, essentially what they're proposing is just to keep that untouched. And then to the south, you can see open field, but also a single family residential property as well. And to the east, these are neighbors along Brooks Drive. And then to the west, we've got a vacant property, but we also have the under construction, the veterinary office that you all saw that plan development not too long ago. So it's looking good. And so in terms of the notices for the smaller property, 8 notices were sent out, 3 in favor, and those are primarily the applicant. And then to the other property, there were 16 properties that were notified, 6 in favor and 5 in opposition, and all of those in opposition are along residents of Brooks Drive. And so staff recommends approval with conditions, and we'll go through those conditions right now. So for the conditional use permit, that, as I mentioned, this one actually would be limited up to 75% of revenue from alcohol sales. So that's more of a restaurant threshold, not a bar. Also, that the general retail uses would apply and standards, except where we specifically call those out, such as having a theater or the playhouse, and then also the vertical mixed use, clarifying that that would be allowed in the proposal. The multifamily dwelling ability to have that on the east half in the brown that we looked at earlier. And then once again, the zero lot line dwellings or such as townhouses. The height, so the height that's proposed is to allow up to 4 stories for the multifamily. However, the developer has offered to limit it to 2 stories, backing up to the Brooks Drive properties. And also we'll go into a P&Z condition in a second related to the conditional use permit. But also what is proposed, and that is in your packet, and P&Z acted upon a condition which would preserve a 20-foot landscape buffer between the multifamily and Brooks Drive, and with not just open land, but actually planting a combination of screening trees and shrubs, large trees, small trees, and shrubs. I'll show you that in a second as well. And then lastly, providing pedestrian emergency access to Crossroads Park to the north, and that would be addressed within the subdivision plat. And so this is related to the buffer. So the top left, that's the exhibit that is actually attached to the Westfield master plan. And so the developer has used this on multiple projects that we have seen. That's much more substantial than what we require in our Unified Development Code. You know, you could just put up a fence, technically meet our buffering standards between multifamily and single family. So this would consist of the 20-foot buffer. Every 100 feet, linear feet, would have at least 3 large canopy trees, at least 13 small trees, and then shrubs. And a combination of these need to be evergreen. So bottom right too, that just kind of shows the layers of screening that would be provided when you have those different types of plantings. And so planning and zoning at their February 7th meeting recommended unanimous approval with one additional condition, because there were neighbors that expressed concern about the potential of having a restaurant serving alcohol near their property. And so the P&Z proposed and the applicant agreed to limit that just to the western half of the property, essentially more the general retail and far away from the adjacent residential neighbors. And that's all I have. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chandler. Council, any questions for Mr. Chandler? Nothing? I know that I received a number of emails regarding this this proposal, and because of those emails and some work that Councilmember Walker did along with Mr. Chandler, we were able to get that there on the eastern portion closest to Brooks Drive lowered to 2 stories. That's that planting buffer that's pretty dense with canopy trees, 3 canopy trees every 100 feet. So number one, I appreciate the neighbors reaching out and letting us know what you thought. And I think that the council and the developer's reaction to those requests is fair. So Tim Davis's opinion. So, but I don't know, if anybody else on council has any thoughts about that before we open the public hearing, but everybody good? All right, then at this time, I'll open the public hearing on items number 7 and 8 at the same time. Anyone wishing to speak on these matters may do so. We ask you step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the virtual platform for this public hearing. So I do, Ms. Dorfler, Mary Dorfler, I think you signed up earlier.
Yeah, I did. And
Yes,
I
ma'am.
signed the paperwork and I shouldn't have, but anyway.
No, that's fine. We've got you at the right spot.
Well, hello, and thank you for letting me address you, the council. My name is Mary Dorfler. I have lived on Brooks Drive for over 40 years. So we are a community on our drive for about 75 people. My house is one of them that the planned brown area will back up against. We've sat outside in our yard many times looking at the sunset all the time. My concern is several things. Is one, the buffer zone is the length of a truck. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. The length of a truck. I don't think that's adequate to put a multi-story building beyond us, because we are, an established neighborhood with a very quiet, nice neighborhood. My other concern is, could the developer move the houses around and put the single family up against a single family development and move the apartment complex in the middle somewhere, or along the zone where the trees are, so that behind our houses is another single family dwelling? I don't understand why they didn't consider that option when they're doing it. We know they're going to do something. When we moved there 40 some odd years ago, we knew that our farmland wouldn't stay our farmland for a long time. So we understand development, especially west development. I was out there when the Lake Road was a 2-lane road. So now it's huge and you can't ever get out. But anyway, the other concern I have is with a multifamily development is the access for emergency vehicles. In the proposal, it talked about using crossroads as an access for emergency, let's see how they quote it, emergency vehicles. And I don't see a road there. So my question is, for a fire truck or ambulance to get to that area, if Hilliard Road is blocked, is the city of Temple building a road across that culvert where the water flows? So that is a concern. I don't see it on the map that anything is in, and right behind there is soccer fields. So soccer people won't be happy. But anyway, right behind there is soccer fields. We've walked along the development back there is very nice. The Crossroads Park is very nice, and we've utilized it a lot with our grandkids. So those are my two concerns that I wish to bring forward to the committee. So I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Alan Lytle, 504 Paseo del Plata. My concern is with the other buffer, the 80-foot tree line buffer. Currently in the south side, when we start developing projects, we go in and we clean those out. We make them pretty. We take out all the brambles and the brushes. If you do that to the 80-foot buffer there, then you're going to give unlimited access for this large population to the soccer fields when things are going on, that perhaps they're going to come out and use the soccer fields as a playground rather than what we were intended for in the park. If you don't clean it up, it's going to look as ugly as it does now. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lyden. Council, I'm sorry, got ahead of myself. Anybody else like to speak, or anybody on the virtual platform? Yes, sir. Come on up.
Just one concern, name's Stan Miller, 402 Brooks Drive. Who is going to maintain that buffer zone? That's a big expense. And secondly, to contradict the last one, the 80-foot buffer actually should stay like it is. It may be an eyesore, but it is the only natural area we have. Just the other day, there's coyotes that come across the field there. There's deer. You're destroying a lot of that natural habitat. When they cleaned out the park for the Crossroads Park, we got a lot of rattlesnakes for a year there where they disturbed all that. But my main concern is who's going to maintain the buffers on that. Is it the city or development or who?
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Anyone else? Is there anyone on the virtual platform? Okay, then at this time, I'll close the public hearing on items 7 and 8. And Mr. Chandler, couple of things. The buffer that will be then owned by the developer. So the developer will be responsible for maintaining that.
That's correct.
Yeah. Yeah. And it won't, I think sometimes, I think the perception may be out there that will sort of become no man's land, where it's never tended to, and it's just allowed to grow up. But
Right.
mine, typically they're considered part of the development, and they're maintained just like any landscaping anywhere else on the development.
Yes, sir. And I'd like to make a distinction between that and what you see on Arby's. Sorry to call out Arby's, but Arby's doesn't maintain their buffer very well. So it's a little bit different when you've got residents that are going, obviously they'll be looking out for the buffer in a way that folks picking up a cheeseburger may not care.
And at some point, that could become a code enforcement issue.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Okay.
So we're still working with Arby's. I'll just let you know that.
Yes. My second question is on the site plan that was shown. That's not necessarily an official site plan. That's just something that can be approved, and then ultimately the developer can move the housing as they wish. Is that correct?
Per the conditions. And so, obviously with a multifamily too, there would be a limit in terms of the number of units that can go in, but in terms of, hey, if it works better for the neighbors and the developer to be able to move the townhouses, perhaps they, can certainly do that. But I think neighbors have spoken loud and clear. And so if it makes sense, then I presume the developer will do that. But yes, there is flexibility in the site plan.
But many times a townhouse is still 2 stories tall.
That's correct. And so that's something too that, I don't know whether those apartments would have balconies, the second floor, maybe not, maybe the townhouses would. but that's where the buffer yard becomes so important to have
Right.
evergreen trees that protect the privacy of those residents, regardless.
Whatever goes in there. Yep, understood. Council, anything else for Mr. Chandler?
Could we get some comments from Ms. Dorfer about the emergency access road, her concern there? I was a little confused as she was.
Yes, and actually, I want to say something too about when this idea first came to our office. The original applicant had actually looked at Brooks Drive. There was a house for sale and asked questions about providing emergency access to Brooks Drive. Thankfully, after some conversations, they just, they moved on from that idea. It was a different applicant than who is before us now, but just wanted to let you all know that that was something that was considered and thankfully determined not to be the best idea. So Crossroads became the alternative for that.
You address
Uh,
how Brian, could you address how how access would happen through Crossroads with the 80-foot buffer? Through the creek?
Sure, and that's to be determined as well. I think in that concept plan, you saw a road that connects to a service road.
Yep. Mr. Chandler, can you put that concept plan? There
Oh, there you go.
Back up.
And so you see the concept showing a connection to an existing service road. But what you also don't see, and actually, if you wouldn't mind going to the previous slide, actually go one more. Make it one more. There you go. So you can see the parking lot for Crossroads in the aerial. And so that's something I think we'd work with the developer. Maybe that makes the most sense to have, to go right through Crossroads, provide that pedestrian connectivity, but also emergency vehicle access. So either way, we'll take the input from you all and any conditions, because that's the nice thing about a PD is that plan development, you all can add conditions. It becomes part of the ordinance. But otherwise, just listening to the residents and their concerns and working with the developer to provide that. Plus, of course, working with the fire marshal and other relevant departments, but also the developer to provide that connection.
I think that's important. I think a couple of things. I think it's important to understand that this is just a zoning case, right? We're not approving the site plan. We're not, saying this is where the roads are going to go. But also there are standards for emergency services. So the road will be wide enough. The entrances will have a long enough ramp up to them. Those obviously those fire trucks are big, and so the requirements for these roads in and out will accommodate any emergency vehicles that would need access there. So there are standards around all of that.
Correct.
Anything else?
I'd like you to go back to the slide that had the conditions that were laid out.
Okay.
Just so we can see them again.
So a two stories will be roughly between 20 and 25 feet high. Is that a close estimate?
Yes, I mean, I think if it's pitched roof, it would be more like 25, but if it's a shed roof for, different roof line, it could be 20. Flat roof.
Now, in addition to this, there is a condition that alcoholic beverage sales would be limited to the western half of the property.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
The alcohol provision, that was part of P and Z's recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes.
So if council chooses to approve this and just approves it as presented, it will include the limitation of the alcohol, but it will not include the 2-story limitation, because that came about after P and Z, right? So if they want to include that as a condition, they'll need to add that as part of their motion.
Yes, ma'am. That would be cleanest.
Okay, good.
Questions?
Nope. Council, anything else? All right. Very good. Then I close the public hearings and I will entertain a motion on item number 7.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we authorize the rezoning outlined in item number 7, including all conditions that have been discussed here.
Second.
Is that clean enough? Or do we need to speak to the,
That includes the 2-story limitation.
very good. Mayor Pro Tem, were you the second? We have a motion for approval on item 7. Motion was made by Councilmember Williams, seconded by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, please cast your vote on item 7. Item 7 passes 5 votes to 0 with the stated conditions. And council, I'll entertain a motion on item 8.
I'll make a motion to approve item 8.
Second that motion.
A motion for approval by Councilmember Walker, the second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote. Item number 8 passes 5 votes to 0. Moving on to item 9 is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing the abandonment and conveyance of the 1.14 acre portion of South 50th Street, unimproved public right of way conveyed to the city of Temple in the final plat of the American GI form of Temple, in addition to the city of Temple as shown in the plat of record in Cabinet B, slide 198B, plat records of Bell County, Texas, and volume 2665, page 168 of official public records of Bell County, Texas. Mr. Mears.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight, before you is a request by the applicant and property owner WBW Development Group, and for the request to abandon a portion of South 50th Street, and it's generally located and addressed right now as 2209 East Adams Avenue. Just a little background, they're seeking abandonment of approximately 1.14 acre of unimproved South 50th Street right away. The applicant purchased the property adjacent to it and is in the process of platting it. This right away was dedicated in 1990 as part of the American GI form of Temple subdivision. It's located adjacent to Wilson Park and is on the south side of East Adams Avenue. Texas Local Government Code Section 272.001B2 allows a city to sell abandoned right of way for fair market value. Just to orient you, the area in green is Wilson Park, and adjacent to it is the currently platted American GI form of Temple subdivision. And that's the property that was purchased by the applicant, and the arrow is pointing to the currently existing South 50th Street right of way. As you can see, it's currently unimproved. And that's a cutout or a picture of the plat. It was platted back in 1990. So we notified all city departments and utility providers. Encore Atmos did have a few concerns that they worked with the applicant to resolve. Had more to do with location of some, if they actually had any facilities in this right of way area, but ultimately they did not. Once those were resolved, they removed their objections, and our city departments did not have any objections. So we proceeded with the abandonment. As of now, obviously there's no plans to actually improve this portion of South 50th Street. So because we're not looking to improve it, right now we don't need this right of way. And like I said, the property owner recently purchased this property in what we would call a typical arm's length transaction. And so the sales price would be a fair representation of fair market value. So staff agreed to use the sales price as fair market value for this right of way. And that came out to about $13,418 an acre, which for a little over an acre would put it at $15,297. So that's what they would have to pay us if y'all approve the sale tonight and abandonment. And if so, we will convey it to the applicant and owner
be a deed without warranty. And their intention is to include that right of way into the platted property as part of the acreage of the plat, so that they'll have more acreage to put the houses on. And so staff recommends approval of the abandonment, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Ms. Demers? Item 9 is subject to a public hearing. I'll open that public hearing now. We ask you step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the virtual platform. There being none on the platform, Mr. Lytle. All right.
Name is Alan Lytle, 504 Paseo del Plata. Really quick question. The ordinance or the reading does not include what the demonstration showed, which is the price of what we're going to sell it for. Does that not need to be in this to allow for not just the abandonment, but then also the fact that we're going to sell it and get some money for it? That's the question on that. And then I'd like to take this opportunity to stray from that in the consent agenda. Mr. Councilman Williams and Councilman Walker, congratulations on another term. Since we don't have an election, nobody got to see that.
Well, I was almost going to pull you in on that one. Getting off topic.
It was. It was.
If you'd like me to answer
Yes, please.
that question, the sales price is included in the resolution that will be signed by council, and that
The
will,
ultimate public and final record.
yes, the formal document. Yes. Yes.
Right.
And also, Mayor, before we move on, we did just realize that we made swap those two items on the last rezoning, that the restriction of the 2-story should have been on the second item and not on the first one. So if we can just have a motion to reconsider item number 8, and then so we'll need a motion to reconsider, a second, and a vote to bring it back. And then once it's back in front of us, we'll just need a new motion, including that the 2-story restriction on that item. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
Do I need to read item 7 back in as item 8? No.
Don't forget
Oh,
to
I'm
finish the
sorry.
vote on
That's
this
right.
one though first. You haven't voted.
I had the floor, so I was just going with it.
I forgot the special recognition tonight. I'm a volunteer.
We just didn't want you to adjourn the meeting before
Yes,
we got
and I was
that done.
just trying so that you didn't feel bad, Mayor, so.
Okay. So what are we doing? Never mind. Okay. So on item 9, right? I'm closing the public hearing if there is no more. Anyone? Okay. I will close the public hearing on item number 9 and entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve. Item 9.
I second that motion.
We have a motion for approval on item number 9 from Councilmember Walker. We have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, if you would, please cast your vote on item 9.
We are unable to vote.
We can't vote.
Working on it.
Let's do a verbal.
Okay.
Councilmember Long,
On 9, right? Yes, aye.
Councilmember Walker,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales, abstain. Councilmember Williams,
Aye.
Mayor Davis.
Aye. The verbal vote, item 9 passes 4 yeses, 0 nos, and 1 abstention. Thank y'all for keeping me straight on that one. And now we're going to move back to item 8. And we just need a new motion.
Motion to reconsider and a second on that motion, and then you vote
Okay.
to bring it back.
Okay, that's enough right there.
I'll make a motion to reconsider item 8.
I think I have to request it.
No. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
When that passed, I was sitting here worrying about something. Is it appropriate at this point to ask a question about that, or should I wait till the second public hearing
On number 8.
on number
So
8?
we don't need to complete another public hearing, But once it's back in front of the council, if you want to discuss it further, you can do that.
I just have a question. I think it's on 8, the
Okay.
one
So-
with the 2-story.
Yes.
Okay,
So council, I will entertain a motion to reopen item number 8.
I will ask to reopen item number 8.
Okay, we have a motion to reopen number 8 by Councilmember Walker. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, please cast your vote on reopening item 8. Reopening of item 8 passes 5 votes to 0.
now my
Councilmember
question,
Long,
I'm
yes.
sorry, and the developer is now gone. My question was, there was one of the residents raised the possibility of the developer considering moving the 2-story buildings to another portion of the land. If we vote this through, limiting it to 2-story, does that keep him from moving it?
He could move it, but he couldn't move anything taller than 2 stories along that property
Okay,
line.
I have no problem with that. Okay.
The agenda item, or I think the discussion was putting 2 stories along the east border.
Right, of the multifamily, and it could step up to 4 stories as the development approaches Hilliard.
So and I'm not in no way saying he should, or I'm asking or anything like that, but there was the opportunity for him to consider moving and putting single family along Brooks, the properties on Brooks Drive, and move the set 2-story ones elsewhere on the property.
Can I clarify something?
Please, thank you.
Townhouses are the single family that's proposed. There is no detached traditional single family, single story
That's my
in this
question.
development
Thank
that is
you. I'm
proposed.
completely
So
confused.
yes, and the townhouses are typically 2 stories. Some
Right.
townhouses are more than 2 stories. So we
Okay.
just have to make sure everyone understands what we're talking about.
I understood that, and that's where my confusion came, because the question was moving and putting single family, and I thought, what single family? So never mind, forget the whole thing. Thank you.
So we opened it. Now we need to vote to close it again.
Yes, now you just have a motion to approve with all of the conditions, including the limitation of 2-story along Brooks Drive, the eastern side.
So I will entertain a motion on item 8B or wherever we are on this one. Entertain a motion on item 8.
Mayor, I move we approve item 8 as outlined with all the conditions, including the conditions set by the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I second that motion.
We have a motion on item 8 by Councilmember Williams. We have a second by Councilmember Long. Council, please cast your vote on item 8.
We'll have to do a verbal on this because we
Yeah,
can only
makes
vote so
sense.
many. Councilmember Long,
Aye.
Councilmember Walker.
Aye.
Councilmember Williams.
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Mayor Davis.
Aye. Moving on to item 10 is to consider adopting a resolution authorizing a second amendment to the Community Development Block Grant Subrecipient Agreement with Citizens for Progress to continue to administer the Housing Improvement Program. Ms. Glover.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. We do not have a presentation for this item. We pulled it from the consent agenda so that Mayor Pro Tem could abstain. And it is essentially adding some additional funding to our housing improvement program for direct assistance.
Very good. Before I entertain a motion, sorry, Sanjanet, yes, I'm pointing at you. Thank you for the work that Citizens for Progress does around Temple to help the disadvantaged. Y'all make the use of that money much more efficient than I think the city would use it. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you for the opportunity to do so.
Yes, ma'am.
We help some needy families, but otherwise, not have a quality of living. We want to have to jump.
Yes, ma'am. You bet. Thank you. Council, anything else before we take a vote? All right, I'll entertain a motion for approval on item number 10.
Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to approve item 10 to include, well, to continue to administer and to include the amendment
Okay.
on item 10. Sorry, it's a very illiterate motion.
Second.
We have a motion for approval by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Williams. Council, please cast your vote on item 10. Item 10 passes 4 votes yes, 0 votes no, and 1 abstention. Time is 6:15. Thank you for attending this meeting, the Temple City Council, and this meeting is adjourned.